And good afternoon, and welcome to All Hands on Deck. My name is Doris Davenport, your host for the afternoon, and you must be noticing that my co-host is not with me today. And that is sadly because Pastor Ira Ackery, the pastor of Greater St. John Baptist Church of Austin Community, is holding a vigil today for a young girl who died. We have so many deaths happening in our community, and we really need to offer as many prayers as we possibly can. This is All Hands on Deck. We are an organization that is empowering the marginalized and encouraging the masses to be catalysts for change. And we want to tell you, Pastor Ackery, that we wish you the very best. There you are. You can see Pastor Ackery there. He is sending his blessings, and hopefully he'll be calling in today as well. If you want to call into today's show, the number is 312-738-1060. We have a great show for you today. I want to first introduce to you a woman whom I'm getting to know and admire quite a bit. Her name is Andrea Rayla. She is a candidate for Cook County Assessor. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
Good. Glad to be on the show.
Great. I'm glad to have you on the show. And I just want to first of all talk to the listening audience about some of the things that have been happening in this year's election. We have about 170 plus people running for different elections. And one of the things that we've noticed is that about 26% of those people that are running are women. And of the people that are being challenged, almost 67% of them are minorities. Now that is a shame.
It's outrageous. It really is. These are county-wide races that we're hoping would have encouraged more women to participate in them, and to have that many women and minorities objected to is just very un-American.
That's right. It is very un-American. And I think that you should realize that when you are out there going to the ballot, there are things happening before you ever get there that you may not even know about. And we want to explore some of those things today. So let's take this journey with Andrea Rayla. So now, Andrea, when was the first day that petition gathering began?
It began September 4th, and we started our petition circulation in the first week of October. So we're a little bit behind. But indeed, we were able to get through 7 weeks of collecting enough signatures to get on that countywide ballot.
And how many signatures are required to get on that ballot?
8,236.
8,236 signatures required for Cook County Assessor. Wait a minute. How many signatures are required to run for governor?
Only 5,000. And Attorney General, only 5,000, statewide.
5,000 signatures required to run for governor, 5,000 signatures required to run for Attorney General, but 8,236 required for the Cook County Assessor's Office. The things that kind of make you want to go, what is it about that office that people want to protect so badly? So once these signatures are collected, and in Chicago, because we have this, in Illinois, because we have this big political game of challenging petitions, we have a handbook that's even written to keep opponents off the ballot. We'll talk a little bit about that. But what people do in order to avoid getting kicked off the ballot is get double and triple the number of signatures they actually need.
That's right.
So you tripled your number, right?
Absolutely.
How many did you collect?
23,350.
Wow. That's a big number.
It is.
But it's also a necessary number.
Yes.
I want to talk about this handbook. We call it the Giaconetti Handbook because it was written by an election attorney named Tom Giaconetti. Tom Giaconetti, in fact, is a very key player in this situation because not only is he the sitting deputy assessor, but he's also the election attorney, one whom many other election attorneys call the dean of the election attorneys. Well, he wrote a handbook, a 43-page handbook, in fact, that Andrea introduced me to. It's a handbook called How to Knock Your Opponent Off the Ballot. Usually, it is used by incumbents who don't want to be challenged by newcomers. Well, we have people now, surprisingly progressives, who have picked up this handbook and they're using it on their fellow progressive candidates, and particularly women.
Yes.
And I understand this handbook is being used against you.
Yes, actually
Twice.
That's right. We had 2 objections We had the incumbent, Joseph Barrios, who objected to our petitions, and we had the progressive, Frederick Fritz Kagi, object to our petitions.
Yeah.
Joseph Barrios put those petitions, both objections to Kagi's and my petitions aside and said we had enough signatures. We had the required amount. And even the Board of Elections said we had the required amount. So we thought, okay, we're home free now, we can start campaigning.
Yeah.
But indeed, no, Kagi refused to withdraw his objection. He said I had to meet a higher standard than the quantity of signatures. I had to meet a higher standard with quality of signatures, because according to him, everyone should have the same threshold. Well, no one's examining either Joseph Barrios's or Kagi's quality of signatures. No one's objecting to them. Only I and our supporters are being questioned the quality of our signatures. So I have a double hurdle.
Wow. And it sounds to me like this is a, the law says, the election law says you have to meet a specific signature requirement. And once you meet that signature requirement, then you're eligible to have your name on the ballot.
That's right.
And what it sounds like to me that Kagi is doing is, in my view, it sounds rather arrogant. For somebody to decide that this is the number of requirements that you might need to get on the ballot, but I'm going to set a higher threshold for you. I'm going to pull out the old Jack and Eddie playbook and really hold you to a whole nother level and a whole nother standard.
Absolutely. It's like the candidate is saying there's only two people in this race. It's going to be Joseph Barrios and it's going to be Frederick Kagi, and that's it. Frederick Kagi has decided for the voters who they get to vote for.
Yeah.
2 men, and get rid of the woman. And I'm the first time running for this office in 85 years.
Wow, that's amazing. So, when I hear the first time that you've run in 85 years, what I also know is it sounds like, sometimes I say that, and it sounds to me like a woman hasn't run in 85 years. But the truth is, in the entire history of this office, we've only had a Cook County assessor for 85 years.
Right, and there have been 9 of them.
And there have been 9 of them. And in that entire 85-year period in the history of a Cook County assessor, we've never had a woman run successfully.
Absolutely.
And we hope that that's going to change today. So tell me, Andrea, what did it feel like when you first discovered that you were being challenged? Did you find out about both of them in the same day?
Yes, we did. And it was interesting because the incumbent, Joseph Barrios, had filed against our petitions at around 3 o'clock. And I thought, okay, that will be our objector right there, the guy that has the top-notch team of election lawyers. They had 4 lawyers against our 1 lawyer. And then all of a sudden at 4 o'clock, Kagi files a petition challenge against me. So now we've got 6 lawyers against our 1 lawyer. Why Mr. Kagi felt that he had to add another objection to mine is beyond me. I see that, and it's still on day 19 or 20 with these objections.
So now, just so we can explain it to our listeners who may not have been through an election challenging process before, when Andrea says that it's been through day what?
About 20.
Day 20 of the election objections, what she's referring to is that when you get challenged, there's something that you have to go through called a records examination. So there are kind of 2 things happening at the same time. You're going through hearings where motions are being made by your attorneys. There's a hearing officer that's accepting or rejecting motions. People are, requesting whether they want to have subpoenas, etc. And simultaneously, there's a record examination going on where those signatures are actually being looked at by a person, a team from the one side, from the objector's side, a team from the candidate's side. They review those signatures, they determine which ones will be sustained, which ones will be overruled, and then sometimes a handwriting expert is brought in to break a tie or make a decision up or down one way or another. And the whole purpose is to be able to find out how many good signatures a candidate has to reach the qualified number required for that office. It's been determined so far that you have how many good signatures?
At least 14,000.
at least 14,000 out of the 23,000, but yet you're still being challenged.
Absolutely, because the opponent has now decided that he wants to see if every notary is a true notary, if a dozen circulators really live where they say they live, and if
Wow.
they really circulated the petition. It's just an examination that goes beyond the scope of reasonableness. We
That's
have a right to
amazing.
be on the ballot, and they are just keeping me away from the campaign trail.
We're going to get back to that. We have a caller on the line. Those of you who'd like to call in to All Hands on Deck, the number is 312-738-1060. Is there a caller? Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello. Do you have a question for Ms. Rayla or myself?
I do, thank you. I have two, but the one I'd like to ask first is the current assessor is accepting donations from tax appeal lawyers, and I'm wondering, Ms. Rayla, what is your opinion on that, and is that something you would do?
Good question.
Okay, yes, I would not accept donations from practitioners before the office of the assessor. And you don't have to even be a lawyer. You can be an appraiser. You can be a tax
Okay.
consultant. You could, be any of those practitioners that are specialists that file claims or assist taxpayers in their filing. So I would say absolutely not, no contributions, and it would be a ban on those contributions for the special interest groups.
And that's great. That's a big issue, caller. I know you have a second question. Just hold on for us. But that's a big question because I know we've read a lot of information, and this also came out in Mr. Grotto's expose from the Tribune, that we have the Speaker of the House, Mike Madigan, we have the head of Finance Committee for the City of Chicago, Ed Burke, then you have Mr. Cullerton, who's also head of the Senate, and all three of them are tax attorneys, and they make their money in this whole property tax world. And so banning that kind of money from them is probably a very good idea.
Absolutely.
So what's your second question?
Thank you. Well, first, I appreciate you answering the first one. It's been on my mind. But my second is, so I did read that article in the Tribune about how commercial properties, that they were basically getting preferential treatment. But separate of the scandal of it, my question is there supposed to be a difference between how commercial properties, industrial properties, and then residential homeowners are actually assessed? Because it seems to me that regular people like me, that we have to pick up the huge burden whenever these money goals aren't met, but it never seems that the commercial or industrial folks, they'll just suddenly say, hey, we're raising taxes, but it's always on people who are regular homeowners. You just never hear of the commercial and industrial people sharing the burden. Separate of the scandal, how is that supposed to work?
That's a good question. Oh,
Yes.
This is great.
Yes, well, every 3 years, there are 3 sections of the county which will receive their triennial reassessment notices. And Chicagoland, all property owners, and the bonanza of the real estate, fabulous real estate in the Loop area, it's going to receive their reassessment notices. Now, what we've seen with the expose is that those Loop properties have never gotten a large tax increase or market value increase for over the past 3 triennials. So 9 years, let's say a building in the Loop might have been valued at $20 million, had gone up to $30 million, it was reduced back to 20, and then the next 3 years, it still sits at 20, went up to 30, was reduced, and then the third triennial, the same pattern. So that means that market value stayed the same for those 9 years, and the only increase might have been the tax rate, but that is millions and millions of property tax dollars that are not collected from some of the best Class A properties in the world.
Wow.
And we need to change that with a new reassessment formula, a formula that is was introduced by the MacArthur Foundation and actually paid for. A formula, it's a reassessment formula that did not get implemented. But I want to say something about those district offices. They don't get placed under that assessment formula. They are reviewed individually.
Really?
Yes. So their income, their special letter properties, and they send in an appraisal to the assessor's office, and the assessor's office looks at them individually and determines whether they should have a market reduction or not. So this is individuals who are making an individual judgment from the assessor's office whether to give that property, loop the Trump Tower, the Willis Tower,
Yeah.
CNN building, whether or not to give them a pass or give them a tax increase.
Well, that's great. Thank you, caller. We appreciate that call. And one of the things that I find the more I learn about this is some of those buildings, when they're undervalued, they're underassessed. Some of those buildings to the tune of $30 and $50 million. Well, imagine if we took every one of those pieces of property in the loop and assessed them at their proper value. And I believe I heard you say this at a forum once, that if you took all that money together, you'd have quite enough money to take care of the public schools.
Absolutely.
And we wouldn't have to be closing schools every other month.
Absolutely. The money that would have been generated with the proper market values just
Yes.
on those South Loop and North Loop districts would have been able to keep 52 schools from closing and certainly fund many, many other schools and keep the tax burden from rising on homeowners and small business. Small businesses and homeowners, they get the brunt of an unequitable tax system that reduces properties that really should shoulder that burden, and it shifts it onto their shoulders, and it's highly
Yeah.
unfair.
Well, let me ask you, I have some friends who live in the southern suburbs. And I tell you, when I talk with them sometimes, my heart just breaks because what they're going through with these property taxes, I know one of them had to pull their kid out of college because they were paying, their property taxes went up almost $6,000. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people don't just have that kind of money laying around. Even though it is an annual fee, it's still a lot of money when you've put that aside for other purposes.
Absolutely. We get our installment in February. So
Yes.
February 1st, we're all going to get our tax bills. And then we pay a second installment in August. And we don't know exactly what these installments are going to be. We hope that with some certainty that they're not going to be too large compared to the second one. But for Chicagoans, they're going to go up because they're facing the reassessment notice, and those old formulas are still in play. But some of the worst neighborhoods that have been really hit the worst with the highest tax rates and highest assessments are the south suburban townships.
Yeah, you don't mean
and
the worst
side.
neighborhoods, you mean those hit the worst.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
And those are, Flossmoor and Markham and Calumet City and Country Club Hills and very good, these are
Good housing stock, as we say.
good housing stock, middle income people, hardworking people, and to have them have to pay taxes that are, 8% of their actual market value, where the other areas and the northern area, south, in the northern city and New Trier, they pay 1 or 2% of taxes to their market value. So the inequity is very gross.
Yeah, that's amazing to me that they can get away with it for as long as they've gotten away with it. I shouldn't be surprised, frankly, given that you have one of our candidates that have come out and basically called the mayor out on what he called strategic gentrification, and I happen to think he's right on that. But listen, I want to ask you something else. You had this situation with your challenges, and now your records examination has been halted. You've got a hearing coming up. When do you think you'll know whether or not your name will be on the ballot?
It will probably be toward the end of January.
Okay.
It may be on the 26th or 27th. And if they rule that I should not have my name on the ballot, I'm certainly going to pursue a second opinion of that.
And you should. Now, today I understand your election attorney, Frank Avila, filed a lawsuit on behalf of you and other candidates who are running in this race. Tell me about that lawsuit.
Well, that lawsuit was brought up today in the district court, and it's a federal suit that claims that 5 different candidates that are running have been discriminated against because they are required to get signatures that are far more excessive than the governor's race, the attorney general's race.
Yes.
And not only that, but the ones that have been objected to are a majority of them are minorities and women.
Yes.
And so there's an equal protection there, but it's also a need for uniformity, the uniformity requirement that should be in place for all candidates that are running, both in the district, in the countywide races, and in the state races.
Yeah.
So it is just now the ruling. The attorney was not able to get a temporary injunction. However, that attorney is going to pursue this case at the next court date on Tuesday.
Great. Andrea, we've got about 2 minutes left, and I'm going to ask, we'll be right back with you in just a moment. While we take this quick break, I'm going to ask Frank Avila, who is the election attorney. We literally have 2 minutes left.
Got it?
And I'm going to now ask
How it went in court.
Frank Avila to talk to us about what happened today while we were in court.
Well-
This is Frank Avila, election attorney.
I'm a little bit tired today because I've been working all night and all day. But we filed a complaint in federal court for ballot access. And this complaint is for Andrea Rela, who is a candidate for assessor of Cook County, Edward Acevedo, who's a candidate for sheriff of Cook County, as well as some water rec candidates. And theoretically, it could apply to any candidate running for countywide at large. This year, the requirement's 8,236. The requirement for governors only 5,000. There's a Supreme Court's case said that you cannot have one requirement by a party that's higher than the smaller jurisdiction, the Socialist Workers Party from the early 70s. In addition to that, they're only challenging minorities and women. This is disparate treatment to women and minorities, violation of the 60 Civil Rights Act. It's a violation of the U.S. and state constitutions. It's not about the individual candidate. If they win, they lose. If you like them, don't like them. It's about ballot access and civil rights. What's happening to Andrea is a crime.
It is a crime, and I wish we had more time to talk with you today, but we'll have to bring you back. I want to thank Andrea
maybe a
Rela,
moral
candidate
crime.
for Cook County Assessor. I'd like to thank Frank Avila for joining me today here
Thank
at
you.
All Hands on Deck. Pastor Ira Ackery will be back with us next week. My name is Doris Davenport, the co-host of All Hands on Deck. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.